Hey gang, welcome back to Two Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 14 in the Cobra Jet rebuild series. I left off with separating the rocker panel, cleaning stuff up on that, welding in a patch, and I'm going to continue on with the rocker panel. Now, there's a variety of ways to do this stuff. I know I had somebody comment that you could, I guess, media blast this thing to clean it up, and that's fine. If you have the resources, go ahead and do that. I used a wire wheel. I used the surface conditioning tool. I used a variety of different things to clean up this piece of metal. So the plan right now is I want to apply some navel jelly to the rusted areas, let that treat, and then I will rinse that off, and then we'll continue on from there. I have picked up, just so you know, I have received the rust encapsulator from Eastwood. Now, this is meant, from my understanding, is to go right over rust, but I'm still going to treat this area, make sure everything's taken care of, and then I will still apply this to help seal everything up. Alright, so like I said, I have cleaned up the bulk of this on the inside. I'm not worried about a little bit of powdery residue that's still showing up on this upper edge, because this is all in great shape. So I'm going to blow this out. And then what I want to use is some of this navel jelly rust dissolver. Now, I've used this before. It seems to work pretty good. The way you're supposed to do it, you apply a little bit, or put a little bit into a cup, and you never want to return this back to the cup or back to the bottle. So whatever you take out, you need to use or dispose of. Now, the only areas that are really needing this treatment is down here in this corner, a little bit here on these spot welds. I don't know how well that shows up, what I can show you. A little bit right there, and a couple spots right here. So the idea is you apply this, and I do have a fan running. If you can't hear it, I do have a fan running to keep the air moving around. So I'm just going to apply this to these areas, and you can already see it's changing color, which is a good thing. And then according to the bottle, I believe you let this soak on here. Let's see what it says, just to be sure. Scrape away loose rust, brush on, working into pitted areas, leave on 5 to 10 minutes, rinse off with fresh water, repeat if any rust remains, leave on longer for heavily rusted areas. So what I normally do is I have this spray bottle of water that I use. And of course I'm wearing gloves. You can see it right there. I mean, as soon as I apply that, it's starting to change color, so you know it's doing something. I'm going to put some up in here. It doesn't need it, but I'm just going to put some up in here anyway. And then this front section, I'm going to put some on the bottom of that piece that I just welded in, because I know it had a little bit of surface rust on it. There's really not much to address in here. I'll go over this just in case there's some areas that I didn't quite get when I was cleaning it up. But you know that the galvanized metal, it lasts better than anything else on these cars. Okay, marking my time, so I'll let this soak for 10 to 15 minutes and then rinse it off. And then once it dries out really good, I will coat this with the Evercoat rust encapsulator, just to be sure. Now, part of this is when you're doing these things, like this flange right here, the wheelhouse sits in there and mates against that. So if you apply paint or anything to the back side of that, just know it's probably going to burn that off. Same way here, this edge, there's going to be some holes here where I weld it to the wheelhouse as well, but that's just part of it. There's no way around it. Okay, I decided to rinse this off with the hose, just make it a little bit easier. That ought to do it. And now you can see that that's cleaned up pretty good. No complaints there. So we'll get this all dried out and come back and hit the inside with the rust encapsulator. Did I mention I got new tires for the tow dolly? Happy about that. Okay, at this point I did wipe this down with just a rag just to get any of the powdery stuff out of it for the most part. And I have the encapsulator and the lid is on this thing, but this thing's locked in. So I've got to get this off before I do anything else. There we go. That thing really locks in there. Now, I don't know if this is similar to like Chassis Saver or Pour 15. But I know from experience, once you open one of these up, they tend to have a likelihood of drying out. So I always try to be careful when I'm opening these. Yeah, I heard just the air pull in just a little. And again, I do have a fan on to help blow the air around a little more. Just trying to be cautious opening this. Oh, this has a pretty strong odor to it. Whew, yeah. That's pretty strong. I think I may have to put my respirator on for that. Let's see what it feels like. Well, yeah, I don't feel anything on the bottom. That's some thick stuff. Okay, let's get this thing moving here. Now, I don't really think I need to coat everything because this upper section, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to do that. Difficulty here is trying to get way up inside there.
get as much as I can down in that overlap. Again, this area is really not necessary, but I'm going to get it in that overlap on this side as well. I hate to cover up the logo. I may just have to leave that. Of course, we're the only ones that know it's there, right? What I'm doing here is trying to add some between where I know the welds are going to be. And what I'll do is also, whenever I get ready to spray or weld this on, I will back drill the holes through the inner rocker and then identify where those are on the outer. Now this up here I'm going to have to weld from the outside in, so I'll have to make holes here, but at this point I'm not going to get too carried away at that. And the other thing we could do is, after this is all on and solid, we could do some frame coater that I used like before on the other car, on the Brooklyn Pony, to coat the inside and make sure it's all good. It's the important thing with this sort of stuff here, you gotta make sure your contact surfaces are clean, because this thing could bond itself shut.
Okay, so here is the rocker panel. It's all coated on the inside. Very happy with the results. I think it's going to be good. As I mentioned, I did paint in between the spot weld locations. May not matter much, but it's going to help overall, I think. Now, what I want to do is I have to create the holes for the spot welds. And as I mentioned previously, I'm going to make the holes in the inner rocker and then weld from the inside out. And that way, I know it's trivial, I guess, but it maintains these original spot welds, or at least the looks of them. So I've already marked the upper, and what I did is I marked the inside first, and then I came over here and I marked the outside. Now, I want to do the same thing on the bottom. So basically, if I put this rocker panel up in place, I'm going to get it close to where it needs to be, and then I can verify from that tab that I kept on there. I can come forward, and basically it's 20 3/8 inches, and that's pretty close. I may go back just a hair. So what I want to do, and if you'll notice, you can see these spot welds, they correlate to those marks. I'm going to tilt this down, and I've already shifted this back just a little bit. But what I'll do is take my Sharpie and mark these indications of where these spot welds were. And that way I don't have to crawl underneath to drill these holes. I can drill them from the outside. Now the only conflict is going to be down here where the torque box is, you know, because this overlaps the inside. So by default, I will probably have to drill out, open some of these welds on the rocker panel to weld into the plate. You can see here's all the spot welds that hold the torque box, and that's where these are right here. So I can't weld, I'm not going to drill through that torque box to make that happen. So here I can just kind of add some welds, but again I'll have to address this area in the middle. But that's pretty much where all the spot welds were. Now this part up here, this is the overlap for the inner piece. So that's kind of another one that's going to be a little different. When I put that inner piece in place, I almost want to weld that on first, and that way I can treat the outer portion of it where it overlaps here. Not that big a concern, but I can put that on and then put this on. So I may end up also doing something different up here. I don't know yet. I've looked at where these welds are, and I may even add a couple. But the thought is, if I weld on the outer piece, which is sitting up there, then I have to drill these holes to weld it to that as well. So that's just the way it is. I'll probably come back and do that, and that way it's solid. But at this point, I've got a bunch of drilling to do. And as I demonstrated previously, this actually fits very close to where it needs to be. This flange, this lower flange here, it overlaps the inner rocker, so I have to trim that down. Same way up here, you can see it sits above the flange here, so I'll have to mark that and square that up. But that's how they make these parts. They just kind of stamp them a little big, and then it's up to you to address them down. As you can see here, I have pre-drilled the first set of holes, let's say, and I use a smaller drill bit to get there, and then I'm going to step these up. Now these holes, I like to use a 5/16, and that is like the second level on this step drill that I got from Harbor Freight. I don't know if you can read that or not. That's 5/16. The reason for that, if you're trying to weld inside of a smaller diameter hole, this is like a 1/4 inch. Once you start to weld inside that hole and you're feeding wire into it, it immediately starts to weld, but it doesn't have time to create that circle. So whenever you're putting weld wire in, what I like to do is get a good hot start either in a dead center and then walk it around and fill in the hole, or I will go to the edge of the hole, walk it around, and spiral it back into the center. With these smaller holes, you really don't get that. You just don't. It's going to be a little bit of a contact area, and then the weld is going to fill in basically that hole, and you don't get that benefit of the burning in effect. So I just like to step these up to 5/16. Now you could probably get away with next one up is a quarter. Nah, I still wouldn't do that. Still wouldn't do that. Okay, so I'm going to continue on doing all of those. As you can see, I stopped up here. I may be able to add maybe one more in, because here's the torque box as it's interacting. I might be able to come up on top and just create a shallow hole on that flange. One way or another, this section here is covered up basically from here back, so it doesn't really matter that much. Underneath here, of course, the torque box is in the way, so I'll have to drill holes in the rocker panel. But the other thing that I've seen is there's a little bit of conflict with these humps right here. I don't know why, you know, when they stamp these out, I know it matches the original and it's meant to center up the rocker panel, but I'm finding it's fighting it just a little bit with the original. So I don't know if there's just some variation between, you know, the original rocker panel and the one that they make for this. The other thing I did is, as I was mocking everything up, I clamped in the wheelhouses. Now these were pre-assembled when they came on the side panel, and I just unscrewed them and took them off, but they're still attached to each other where they had them attached. So in doing so, I can overlap the rocker panel and make sure, even though I already know my measurements, make sure that that is wrapped around like it should be, and of course it is. And I can adjust that just a little. You can pull this back and forth and that wheelhouse will move. So the other thing is, now this, I didn't make those 5/16 on this one. Part of that reason I went with a smaller, slightly smaller, and I may step them up yet, but the reason I didn't is this plate is much thicker than this piece. So when I start making contact, I have plenty of time to make some heat and burn that in. Shouldn't be a problem at all. This is fitting nicely against my strut here that holds up everything, and I've trimmed it down so that it matches the shape as best I can. I think it looks pretty good, and this has been pretty accurate as far as fitting the length of the rocker panel. So when I get to that point, I will take this, I will treat the inside, I'll paint it, you know, so that's all taken care of. Of course, I'll knock off all these burrs, and then the overlap here, I'll have to look and see if there's any value in trying to cover up any of this, because the outer rocker is going to sandwich over that. It comes all the way up to here. So I may put some on the inside here just to make it a little bit better, but that's where we're at. So let me get these holes drilled up and continue on. Well, I am ready to weld on this rocker panel. Now I took the front piece here and I degreased it and I sprayed it with Rust-Oleum primer I think that's going to be a good coating for this. I noted that there's no nut on the inside, but we can do that later. All the holes are prepped. Everything is prepped on the outside, or the inner rocker, let's say. And then, of course, the rocker panel itself is ready to go. Now, just an observation here. You know, I've taken these measurements from the front and verified those against that car. And what I found was this location, this hole, coming off of the front edge here, the passenger side was actually 11 1/4 to the center of that hole, and the driver's side was 11 1/2. So, you know, that just shows you, and that was the measurements on that car. So that just shows you how much variation there is in some of this assembly of these cars. So what I will do is clamp on this front section first, and then I will, and once I weld that on, and maybe grind down some of the welds just to have the outer rocker fit on top of these welds right here. Once I do that, I will put that outer rocker on and weld it in. And of course, I am using currently the Arc Captain welder, and I'll point out that I finally got a winner of the drawing. I had done 3 different drawings, and Ray Buckman has finally won the new welder outfit from Arc Captain. So if you haven't checked those out, you can look. I'll have a link in the description below. I also have videos on this welder. I really like this welder, and I'm using 30 thousandths wire on this particular weld. So here's where we're at. I have just set the side up here on top of the rocker panel. Everything is fully welded on the rocker panel. It is in, pretty much the exact location where it's supposed to be. I have a very nice fit on the wheelhouse right here. And the wheelhouse, this is clamped into place, but it is not in its definite location. It could be adjusted slightly up or down, but it fits everything really nice. It could be very close to it, the right location. Now, the side is just sitting up here. These were the screws that were installed by Dynacorn, and they are not in line. They're just a hair off. This one is actually closer, the one that's behind here, if I can show you that. So it's very close to going in those holes, but I'm not quite ready to weld this on yet. Just wanted to show you the status. So when I welded this, of course, I welded from the inside and plug welded all those holes. So I do have to sand. I want to sand those down some, make them a little smoother, and then underneath, obviously I welded underneath there as well. I don't know if you can see those, but all those plug welds, and that worked out pretty well. Having it on the frame jig, I was able to lay on the floor basically. So at this point, what I want to do is clean up the welds here. There's some welds on top of the overlap pieces where the rocker overlaps that new piece. So I have to blend those a little bit and probably address those welds on the inside. Also, I need to do a little prep work. So these holes were where I had just separated things to get it loose from the rocker panel. You can see there I didn't drill that all the way through. And back here, it'll take a little bit of tuning as well to make those work. You can see that one just barely was on the edge. So I may clean that up and make a better hole further back. Now this has to sit inboard probably about 3/4 of an inch. So this part of it is supposed to be against the inside of this. That's looking really good in my opinion. I'm very happy with how that looks right now, and the measurement is where it needs to be. Let me grab a tape measure. So 20 3/8, as I had mentioned previously, and if I hook that and get underneath and hook that, I'm basically right at it. Come on, tape measure. Basically right at 20 3/8. And then the other measurement was 58 7/8. Now, what's interesting is you can maybe see the little tab right there. This is the tab of the original piece of sheet metal, and this is from the new B-pillar. Those don't line up. And when I was doing some measuring, I was a little concerned because I know it said 58 7/8, and this one was not working out. So, just to show you, if I go up against the inside of that one and then come up here to the front and get it all in place, it's 58 7/8. So that is where it's going to sit. The corner of the kick panel is up against the bent back portion of the inner rocker, so I'm happy with that. Now what I want to do is again clean up those other pieces. I was debating on whether I wanted to put the side on it, but I may have to because I need this square tubing to cut the other side apart, and that seemed to work pretty well. So let me see what I can come up with if I want to attach this. I may just leave the wheelhouse in place and just clamp it to the wheelhouses, and that way it'll help keep it stationary. Okay, so again, I have test fitted the side panel just to see how it's going to look, but there are welds here that I want to blend down, smooth out, that way they don't interfere. I need to get these old tabs off that I was using as a reference point, so need to do that, and then sand down some of these welds on the inside. I'm not worried about the ones underneath the vehicle right now, or underneath the pan. They're not as important at the moment. Let's do a little sanding. This also gives me a chance to check any of my welds if I need to come back and touch them up. Now, I'm not trying to completely remove those. I actually want to be able to see those welds. So that's all I'm going to do is just knock down the tops. Okay, I like it. I dare say it's raining. Oh. Wow. Okay. Storm is here. Oh boy. side is welded on. And as expected, it's very stable. I mean, there's still some movement, but it's very stable. I did weld down on the edge of the B-pillar there. On the back side, same places where it was welded. From dynacorn, I actually added a little more weld on that top edge, so it's a bit more rigid. Welded on the A-pillar and the front side of the kick panel. I've added a little bit back there. I may add 1 or 2 more welds. I had the piece of square tubing a little bit in my way, so now that that's open, I may add a weld there. That tab inside is welded down, and all of my measurements are right where I want them. I did some other measuring off the top of the torque box here to this corner, and it's the same as what's on that car. My cross measurement here, 61 inches over to that top of the inner rocker, is exact. And then just for fun, I did a measurement off of this location down to the floor pan, and it's the same as on that car. So pretty happy with that. Now I think, just for fun, I may just set the quarter panel up on there and see what it looks like. Okay, I must say I am very happy with how this fits. I don't think I could have got this any closer to dead on than what it is. Everything's clamped where it should be. Up here, this is all lined up. It fits the shape of the roof panel, or the flange up here on top, dead on. I don't know if I can show you or not, but the wheelhouse, it's all where it should be. It's hard to get the camera in here. It's all where it should be. The overlap here is at 0. The inner flanges, everything's clamped on. In the back, I have clamped to the what would be the pinch weld for the windshield or the rear window frame. That's all dead on. Underneath, or well, back here, everything is fitting almost dead perfect. So I'm happy with the placement of the side, and now I know that at least the dynacorn panel will fit. Now the plan still is to cut that quarter panel off and use it, but at least I know this panel fits like it should, and that panel hopefully fits as good, if not better. Well, that'll be the end of this video. You know, I'm very excited to see this progress, see things fitting together as they should, and I'm looking forward to getting the other side taken care of as well. So the next step in the process, I will be cutting loose the driver's side rocker panel, doing the same thing that I did to this side on the driver's side, getting all that fitted in and welded. I will probably try to do a video on that. It may be more of a time-lapse type of thing, because you've already seen what I've done with this side. So I want to thank you for watching. If you would, leave a comment and a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that bell notification button. I did a drawing recently for a welder that I had to give away, and 2 people that I drew for that welder didn't respond. So apparently they didn't have their notifications on. So make sure you do that. I also want to give a shout out to my patrons. You know, YouTube is not what it used to be. My revenue for some reason just continues to go down and down and down and down. So I count on the support I get from my patrons. So I thank them very much for that. And if you're interested in becoming a patron or supporting me in any other way, there are descriptions or there are links in the description below that you can use to do that. So again, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves. See you.